move to the other job before you go to jail first.
Is that the biggest challenge?
No,
would you call that the biggest challenge?
No, the biggest challenge.
Once you're in, I would say.
Well, no, I mean the biggest challenge right now is you want to go beyond sort of engaging on government's agenda to participating in the overall process of setting the agenda. And if you can get, broad, how do you move the government to take on challenges that you see that maybe from their perspective they're just not seeing. One of them that we focused on at Microsoft now is we call digital peace. Because in cybersecurity, there's now more than 30 countries with cyber offensive capabilities. And with Ukraine, the NotPetya attack, attributed to the Russians, it caused, $1 billion of damages and set back the economy and caused real hardship for people. It also spilled over and Maersk, the world's largest shipping company based in Denmark, they also suffered perhaps $1 billion euros of damage. And so, but we want to change the dynamic of how do we get cyber constraints on nation states that would use cyber weapons against ordinary people and businesses. And so we're trying to change that agenda. And so, I've been doing cyber diplomacy. I've gotten to know the whole cyber community. And this November 11th, President Macron is going to bring together world leaders for the commemoration of the centenaire of the armistice ending World War I. But we've worked with the French government to include cyber peace as a major theme of the Paris Peace Conference, which will begin that afternoon. Because for the 21st century, this is an important topic. And so by trying to put things on the agenda, that's the start. And then, it's fine to work reactively what government says the agendas are, political leaders, but the biggest challenge is can you put big issues on the agenda to get them addressed.
Okay. Maybe, I don't know if you could share, Frank, an example of a successful campaign that when you were in a government, that in the sphere of, I would say, environment and ecology, that was very successful, that somebody put on that agenda and that made really a difference? Would there be any example you could share with us? You can share many probably.
No, but one where I think all have been confronted with are fridges. In fridges, you had 30 years ago a liquid which guarantees that the things, together with electricity, are cold, stay cold. And later on it was discovered that this destroys the ozone layer if it's leaving the fridge through a freeze, or then the fridge is no longer used.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time we succeeded to get even an international protocol, an international treaty, the Montreal Treaty, to ban this substance. And now you don't have any fridge anymore using this. And what is happening now with artificial intelligence, that this is suddenly on the agenda. And these are all examples where this is a mutual benefit, a win-win situation between the political world and the outside political world, the stakeholders. And therefore I would ask you nevertheless not to speak only industry on the one hand and politics on the other hand, but stakeholders which include as well civil society and others, and not only focus only on industry.
Parties, but really on all the stakeholders, yes. And always go for the win-win. And would you then say, in case, which most of the time happens, you have two people, they don't agree, then they want to find a balance and they skip some of their points. Should they not go for the the third better option?
The wonderful thing in Brussels is, if I would like to charm you, for example, yeah, and you are a politician here, I would say, you know, what I admire with you is that you always find a compromise. If I say the same in Berlin, Paris, London, Moscow or Kiev, it will be an insult. Here it is the highest form of compliment. You would say, Frank, do you think this is really the case? And this is wonderful. Brussels is the capital of compromise. But compromise not understood in the negative sense, but to force the stakeholders to discuss, that you find something where all are able to live with this. And this makes me incredibly fascinated, because before we used wars to oppose, and now we use night-long discussions.
But you would not charm me, because I think that a compromise is not what we should do. We should go for the third better option. You have your idea, I have my idea. We should try to go to a solution.
I totally disagree with you, because the third way is already a compromise, including elements of number 1 and number 2. Therefore, even the third or fourth or fifth or sixth option is a compromise. And this is fascinating. And therefore, for all people who think there is a dead-end street, there's no compromise. Go to Brussels, live here half a year, and you see for every situation there's a compromise.
Okay, maybe before we will check whether some people have questions, a last question for you, Katrina. Do you think that the implementation of a meritocratic approach in Ukraine would be something that is possible? And when I say meritocratic society, I suppose we all know what that is. It's that people get rewarded more on what they achieved rather than based on wealth or a social position. Do you think this is a possibility in Ukraine to have that kind of society?
You know, meritocratic system in government firstly has success in Singapore. So Lee Kuan Yew said that the meritocratic system is the best system, and it's not so discussable like ideology. Because, for example, if we are talking about ideology, we see that here also in Brussels and all over Europe we have a problems. Yeah, now we have a problems with radical movements, with also right wings of political parties. But I think that meritocratic tools can be used in party building, because if we talk about a good policy, for example, here in Belgium or in Germany, you understand how people move into parliament, for example, or to Bundestag or to other parliament. And in post-Soviet Union countries, Ukraine, Moldova, Bulgaria, Georgia, it's not, understandable way. And party building, and I work also with party building, with political forces, so I know many insights. It's not so stable process. Mm-hmm. And we can't, in those countries, found for some ancient tools, for example, ideological political forces, to build this system of communication also with business and with other stakeholders. So we must, moving forward, maybe 2 steps forward, to build these institutions. And that's why really meritocratic tools, meritocratic way can be, I think, this tool for economic growth. And of course, it will be economic growth. It will be development for our industry, for government relations, for lobbying, for advocacy, for public affairs, and so on and so forth. Because we need to understand all system, and in post-Soviet Union countries to develop this system from, not from 0, but sometimes from -1, really.
Okay. I see that time is almost up, so I would like to see whether some of you would have... Yes, please.
My name is Robert van der Meulenbroek. I'm a former Belgian ambassador. Listening to the 3 speakers, I noticed that each of the 3 has used some keywords. As for Katerina, I have written here Ukraine and Russia. Russia suffering from a post-Soviet Union syndrome. Now, that may have been the case 10 or 15 years ago, but I think that Russia is recovering from this post-Soviet Union syndrome. It will take time. As to John Frank, I mentioned, and you said it, listening and dialogue is so important, first, before doing anything else. Now, in the US, that may be something very challenging now, because Republicans are shouting to Democrats, and Democrats are shouting to Republicans, and nobody is listening to nobody else. This may be a result of the pre-election period, but hopefully, after the 6th of November, things may die down. I'm not sure of it. As to Frank, you used a marvelous sentence on the European Union and on lobbying, and you used the word being proactive. That is what Europe is learning now, and it's quite a recent phenomenon. For lobbyists, I mean professional lobbyists, it has been there forever, since 20, 30 years. But from civil society, and that is becoming stronger and stronger in the European Union, it's a relatively new phenomenon. And it's increasing. And we should be thankful for that. I don't know if that would...
Can I ask a question to Mr.
Yes.
Are you the famous Mr. van der Molenbroek, who has written the book about Trump?
Yes.
Wow! Because this book is incredible. I started to read it. It is the first time that a non-American has written a book in English, published in the US,
Yes.
focusing on the foreign affairs aspects of the policy of Trump. Wonderful. The first 50 pages I read are already wonderful. And I hope you will have a chance to read this book as well.
And did you like the cover of the book? Because the cover of the book is
yes.
painted by, made by his wife, who's next to
Correct, yes.
him, and it's also very, very nice.
I see you know the book as well.
They just mentioned it to me, so I
will be better with microphone. So can I reflect to your quote about Russia? I don't really. I have colleagues who worked with Russia, mostly with multinational companies, but big number of companies after aggression in Ukraine close their offices there. I think that today we have conversation not about geopolicy but about lobbying. And if talking honestly, really beer industry, alcohol industry, tobacco industry, so multinationals who have offices in Russia also, they work with Duma and they lobby, I think not in classical way, but they have offices with jar directors and so on and so forth. But if we're talking about classical industry, I for a long time know Mr. Mintusov, maybe you know him. He's head of Government Relations Professionals Association in Russia, and he's quite an old person, so quite experienced, and he also was political manager for a long time. I think that more than 30 years. And he said he's liberal in his views, as he can be liberal in Russia. But he and his colleagues work very hard on government relations industry in Russia. But still, I see many polls about position and about proactive position. I think that really government relations work can be in countries where people not so poor like in Russian village, like in Ukrainian village, because proactive can be person, not protest, but proactive, who have basic normal income. And when our people haven't income because of kleptocratic system, they can't analyze all arguments like my colleagues said. It's my position. But I really haven't experienced work in Russia, and I don't want to work with Russia now because we have aggression.
Do you want me to respond to this?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you for the information, because I didn't know that. But since I've retired 10 years ago, my main interests in the world were and remain US, Russia, Eastern Europe, the Middle East and the Far East. And that is because I worked for 13 years in the Middle East and I worked for 8 years in the Far East. And my wife always accompanied me to these places. For Russia, I'm quite optimistic for the next years. Not because Russia will embrace democracy or anything that is related to democracy, like free press, for instance. No, but there is a civil movement underway that is slowly changing the political structure from inside.
Like Navalny, you mean?
Yes,
Sobchak,
Navalny is one of the guys who for years has been one of the forces behind it. And it's difficult to try to evaluate what his influence is on Russia. But in my view, and following him regularly, it is getting greater.
I hope, and I hope that about international relation and about public diplomacy with Ukrainian question, we need more, people's diplomacy. Because if, for example, voter in Russia wanted to vote for Sobchak or Navalny, liberal changes really can be. I hope so also, I hope.
You wanted to react also, I think?
Can I comment? In early November, the United States will have an election for members of Congress and 1/3 of the United States Senate. And the expectation currently is that the Democrats get the majority of the House of Representatives, and the Senate probably remains Republican. But with a Democratic control of one of the houses, they gain certain powers to operate the committees, including the power to subpoena and investigate. And so I'm actually, and of course I think that Donald Trump's tax returns will be one of the first things they want to investigate. And there's going to be, we also have the Mueller investigation of, the possible criminal conduct during the campaign. So I think actually partisanship in the United States for the next 2 years is going to get much worse than it is today. And I think today it's at a low point historically in modern times. I wish I could be more optimistic, but I don't see a reconciliation taking place until possibly after the next presidential election. But I fear that we're changing norms in how we work our democratic government that are going to take a very long time to repair.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, like one
But
last
short,
short
I don't like
reaction
what
before
you
we close.
said. You said they control the parliament. No, I don't think a political party can control. This is English language. You have the majority, and then you do something with it. The word control, I think, is not appropriate. But for the Ukrainians now, a short sentence. Dear Ukrainians, your big neighbor is Russia, and it will be your neighbor up to the end of all times. I studied theology, therefore I'm very close to God. And God, she, I think she's a she, speaks regularly to me. And she explained me the following. At a certain moment, she had a strange idea. She created, this was after Adam and Eve, she created other countries, and she always placed, that was her strange idea, idiots on the other side of the border who think you're an idiot. Well, before it was French and Germans, now it's with Japanese and Chinese, with Ukrainians and Russians. And I asked God, why did you do this? And she answered, I admit it was a mistake, therefore I created the European Union, that we can show that it's possible to live together in mutual respect, even with the idiots on the other side of the border who think that you are the idiot. Therefore I propose you in Ukraine, please accept that Russia is your border and think whatever you think about them, and I would say the same to Russians, but try to find a way to live together on mutual respect. Even if you might think the other is not prepared, try it, and try it. You are condemned to it by God, by her. Thank you.
Thank you. And indeed, I think it's a nice last sentence to close this discussion. We started 10 minutes late, and we are still 10 minutes over time. I'm very happy I was here with you. I wish you all a very interesting day today. I will have to leave because I have another big event to present tonight. But please give a last round of applause to our fantastic panel.
And thank you to our wonderful moderator. Thank you. Thank you.
I rode my bicycle. But I'll send you. I'll send you a note.
Yeah, no, I don't have mine. I'll give you my card.
Faster.
Okay, thank you for your attention, and we'll gather in 5 minutes, I think, okay? So I'll wait for you in 5 minutes here. Thank you.
No, it is too much light. No, it's too much.